Hey, what's up guys? So I'm going to be doing an online battle. This is going to be, of course, using the new DLC that just came out for free. Make sure you check it out and go download it. Right now I'm going to be using the Roxolani, I believe, and they have a lot of different units. I like them. The Scythians are going to be mostly skirmishing heavy build, and the Massagetae are going to be mostly really heavy troops. And so what you see a lot of actually in these battles is going to be a lot of people going for the Massagetaes, and they're going to be using a lot of these cataphracts armies. So I figured I'd be a little different and try something else. I'm going more for a numbers approach, and usually what I find is with these cavalry engagements, this is going to be my third battle. Basically what I find with these engagements is it becomes a mosh pit, basically like an infantry fight, but it's a mosh pit where just once you're committed, you're pretty much committed. There isn't too much moving around after that. So what I think you should do, actually, what I recommend you do for your own battles is that you try and plan ahead of time, because you know it's going to come down to a big cavalry battle. So try and, before you get into that cavalry battle, get as many advantages as possible. So the way I would say to do that is try and land some strikes on your opponent from the side, and try and keep some troops back in reserve. Also with these cavalry battles, you'll see that both armies are going to be taking a lot of units that have huge charge stats and attack stats. So what you definitely want in these battles is to have some sort of fodder unit in order to negate the enemy's charge. So that's why here I actually put 5 of the lowest tier lancers. I think brought those guys. They're pretty light, and the main goal of them is to either soak up a charge, or I can save them for later in the battlefield and I'll throw them into the backs of my opponent or something like that. So that's what I would say to do. Bring a couple, bring like maybe I would say a third or half your army should be heavy troops that can hold up, and the rest of it should be troops that can do kind of specialty tactics. So for example, bring some meat shields, maybe bring a couple horse archers, and then what I would also say is bring in some melee cav because they're cheaper. And actually, once the melee is engaged and there's no real room for cycle charging, you definitely want people who excel in close quarters. So that's why I brought some melee cav. From the battles I've played, it doesn't seem like they're exceptional, just because some of the elite units that, for example, the cataphracts, they're pretty much good on the charge, good on the attack and weapon damage and all that stuff. So the melee cav, it's not as night and day as it was in Shogun. So you know, I'm still playing around with the balancing. But yeah, I think this is a pretty solid build for me, but it does take some micromanagement. Of course, if you come with just a cataphract army build, you can just kind of charge them in, throw them in. You don't have to worry much about archers. It's mostly kind of like a rush build, even though it's just for cavalry, if that makes sense. Anyways, I'm going to be moving up one of my unit of archers. I figured I'd bring them into the fight. I would bring at least maybe just one archer unit for a couple reasons. First, it allows you to dictate where and when the first engagement occurs, because you move these guys up, and if your opponent is all just melee cav, well then he's going to have to chase you or suffer the wrath of just, you know, more and more shots coming in. So that makes it so that he has to engage you. Also, if you can save these guys towards the end of the battle, you can actually just put them to the side of a cav blob and then just get them really close, and then they'll just keep shooting into the cav fight. If you can circle them around behind your enemy and just keep shooting at them like that, that'll be perfect. You'll get a lot of kills, and it should have an additional morale bonus when fighting the enemy. Also, Cantabrian Circle is in effect with these units. It's cool to see that make a comeback. Actually, I'm not sure if some units had it before. At least I've never used it, but it's definitely looking very cool, very awesome, and yeah, I really like using it. So anyways, you can see my opponent here is going to be taking the bait, so he's going to be moving in. As I said, because I have archers, I can dictate the fight, so he's going to be moving some of his steppe noble lancers here. So those are going to be his medium strength troops, and his main body is going to be a bunch of cataphracts. So seeing as I've got him looking over here, I know he's microing over here, I'm going to move my wing in the back to attack. So that's what you want to do in these cavalry engagements is, as I said, you know that the fight at some point is going to turn into a big blob. Everything's going to be engaged, and at that point you need to break your enemy in the various blobs. So how do you do that? Well, I would say keep one of those archers who can support and shoot his units in the back, and then also keep some reserve troops. I would say actually in these cavalry engagements, that's maybe one of the most important things here, because of the way units health works, especially the armored units. They're going to be in combat for a while, so as long as you can bog them down, even if you don't have as many units, you can bog his down and use the remainder of your units to flood around and get a rear charge and really devastate their morale. So that's what I would say in terms of tactics. So you can see he's moving up his horde of cataphracts in the center. I'm sort of going to try and bait him in with these archers and then as he pulls in, I'm going to try and form a big U around him, and you know, that's something you can do with the infantry fight. It's also something you can do with cav fights. Don't think that cavalry just have to charge in straight away. So make sure you get as many opportunities to flank and go around your opponent as possible. It makes a big difference. You can also see I hid these guys here from view. My opponent's going to try and charge here, which means I get a pretty nice side charge. The good thing about this is when you're attacking from the side like that, you get a full charge, and of course your opponent is not going to be charging you back. Even if he does turn to meet you, he's not going to have the best front. Because I have a wider front, more of my troops will actually be connecting with his, so my charge will actually have a bigger effect. And you can see here, I don't want to charge in all my units at once. That's something a lot of people will be tempted to do, is just charge one of your units. You don't need to charge in all three because you're kind of wasting the overall effect of your charge. Charge in one, retreat the other two, and then see if you can get them around the sides and charge back. So for example, that's exactly what these guys can do. My opponent did it as well. He charged my guys right there, and now I'm moving in with more guys. But because I've waited for him to charge my guys and all of his are stationary, it's kind of like the last guy is going to come in and deliver that anvil strike afterwards, and it's kind of who can land the last anvil strike who has the advantage, because the units that you attack who are sort of pinned in front of you, they're going to have the negating morale effect of being surrounded, so you always want to be kind of the last person to land one of those strikes. And you can see this force here that I kept in reserve is perfect because it's going to be able to attack his horse archers here that retreated. Also, my opponent is not quite ready for them, and so he's kind of prematurely engaged most of his forces, which means that when these guys attack, actually they're going to be getting, as I said, that final charge. His guys here are going to be a bit clumped up, so I'm going to take advantage of that, tie them down with just one of my units, and kind of distribute these charges around. You can see in a prolonged fight that's not going to be boding well for me, but because I have, you know, one guy holding up three, it means I have two more additional guys who can run around the sides, and that's exactly what I'm going to do with these forces here, is do that. And you'll see here, you know, most of the cavalry engagements are going to draw on for a while, but you'll see as I start landing these rear charges, it's going to start to turn the tide. I'm also going to bring my archers back in here and start to engage in the fight. My general's right here. I'm going to pop rally in case he dies. And you can see I'm starting to sweep up the back of his troops, and just as I said before, you start to get that crescendo effect of more and more of his units retreating. So here I'm going to charge in these, just one unit. I realize I don't need two of them. I'm going to save the other guy, and I'm going to send him into one of these fights. Always keep in mind that you don't have to charge all your units in at once. You know, one will do, and move the others around the flank. Trust me, the micro will pay off. Even if you're gonna, you know, say you're not very good at micro, then I would say maybe just, you know, select make your army maybe into a couple rows, and then say, okay, I'm going to charge with the first row. Once they're engaged, I'm going to charge with the second row, and then the third row, sort of force around the flanks of your opponent, see where you can sneak them in, where you can land in more strikes. And yeah, you can even land some ambushes with your armies. You can see how I flanked those early forces around the woods, and how now they're being able to sweep around the back, smack the opponent in the back. And so even these heavily armored cataphracts are going to be tied down, and by being charged and all that stuff, they're just going to lose more and more men. Because cavalry are expensive, especially the cataphracts, this is going to be the battle that you're going to see happen. Now, I have played a couple games. As I said, I lost to a cataphract build, but I think now I'm getting more and more used to it, and I do like having the fodder units. So, yeah, that's going to be basically how the battle turned out. I would like to thank my opponent. He was really nice, very nice, and apparently he knew about the channel. So if you're watching this, thanks so much for the battle, man. And yeah, I hope I can find you again online. We can play some more. I actually saw right here in my Steam you sent me a friend request, so hopefully I'll remember to accept that. Anyways, great battle. I hope you guys can learn from this, and yeah, let me know what you think of the new armies and the builds, and what you find works and doesn't work. Yeah, that's perfect. I will see you guys next time. Thanks so much for tuning in, and peace out.